All right,
All right,
welcome.
Rachel. We're Excellence at Work
That's
doing
right.
AMA. Ask me anything. I know we have some questions already sent in from a couple of audience folks. So I think that's pretty cool. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that. And anyways, let's get started. I'll let you lead the way, Rachel.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that people sent in questions because that was my one concern. Like, what if nobody wants to ask us anything, Mike? Because I mean, you're everywhere, I'm everywhere. I was worried, but not today. I'm so glad that everybody is with us and that we get to chit chat a little bit outside of our normal conversation and hear what people want to learn from us.
Yeah, it's been a minute, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been probably more weeks than we've ever spent apart in terms of webinar, right? We probably stay in
Yes.
touch. We stay in touch quite a bit via email and
Yes.
text or what have you. But yeah, it's been too long. So let's get into it.
Well, next week you're actually going to be here live at Women in Leadership, our
That's
summit.
right. That's right. I was just worried about the weather because all of my outfits are sleeveless. I'm thinking it's supposed to be Florida. It's going to be nice and warm. And you all have a cold snap right before the WIL summit.
We do, but you know what? It's going to keep the iguanas away in Florida, so that's
Oh,
okay.
there we go. There we go. I'll take that. I'll take that. Yes, I'm excited to join Rachel Cooke and various other women leaders from across different industries,
Oh,
different
incredible. Yes.
sectors, different levels of leadership. We've got CEOs that are going to be joining us, and I've seen the agenda. I'm really looking forward to it. If you can go to one of these things, you need to go because you're going to benefit from just being in the room. You know what I mean?
No, I benefit. It's pretty awesome. So what do you want to lead off with today?
Where should we start?
Looks like we're a little bit paused, but that's okay. I'm sure you'll be.
I think
Oh,
we
here we go.
got, and I'll start with just, am I back? Uh-oh. It's this weather. I'm telling you, the weather is slowing down our feed. Okay.
Yes.
I was saying I got a question geared toward me, so I'll start with one of mine. It says, you've talked about growth pacing, how leaders can honor the different seasons of their team members, right? But
Hmm.
how do they do it without losing performance momentum? Okay, okay, that's a good
Hmm.
one. I talked about this in the leadership lounge. I do the newsletter.
Oh, I think we're having some technical difficulties. Looks like the cold weather is slowing down our internet connection, like it is some of the iguanas here in Florida. So I'll let Rachel Bolton come on in a second with that.
Right,
Um,
everybody's not trying to get to the net.
no, go ahead, Rachel. I'm sorry. We were a little bit frozen there.
That
Well, I will talk. So I'll talk a little bit while we're having some technical difficulties here in Florida or Atlanta, which is fine. One of the questions that we've had, before is talent retention, and what's one of the levers that we can actually use to keep the talent that companies already have. And I think the biggest thing I've seen so far is career mobility. Career mobility meaning that employees are 2 to 3 times more likely to stay if they see a clear internal path forward, even if the compensation is flat. So we have to think in terms of development, not always dollars, and this does drive loyalty. Being able to move somebody from one position in a certain department over to another so they can learn more about the business is always very, very helpful, and always very, very useful. I think when Rachel comes on, she'll probably address that question as well too. We're seeing a big shift as well in how companies define leadership success over the last I'd say over the last 2 to 3 years. And, part of that is um, thinking about collective adaptability, team development. So it's kind of a shift from individual performance to this collective adaptability concept, as we call it. And I think a lot of the success or the successful leaders that I see and that I speak to every single day, they have to drive things like cultural resilience, especially in today's climate, trust, agility and not just necessarily results. And we have some leadership development benchmarks that we've developed in the last year or two around this area. So thank you for that. Additionally, I think that culture is very important when we look at leadership and organizations and how companies can succeed. Culture is not necessarily about how everybody interacts when the company is going really well. Sometimes culture gets defined when things aren't going well. I think Mike Vrabel, I'm a Patriots fan, so Mike Vrabel, the head coach of the New England Patriots, essentially said, culture is not about when you're 6-1. Culture is when you're like 2-5 and you've lost 2 or 3 games in a row. You know, what is your culture truly like then? And I think that's a really important way to define things and go through things. It's important. There's so much stuff about leadership development that's going on. A lot of audience questions that we've had come in with this in the last couple of days is, should I do leadership development? Should we always be doing leadership development? My answer is always, even if you're not great at leadership development, our research truly shows that if you're doing at least something, you're going to improve one way or the other. It's not always perfect. It's not always a straight line, but you have to be figuring out how to develop your leaders. And that's really key and that's really important. I'm looking for some other questions potentially that we have here. Let's see. Right. We have one on the future of learning. So one of the questions is, how do we see L&D evolving in the next 18 months when we see AI at the same time accelerating content creation, something we deal with? I look at AI as redefining the skill and the speed of what we're doing in terms of creation. But instead of just creation, I think we have to think about curation, right? So our research shows somewhere between 55 to 65% of L&D leaders are shifting from course building to thinking more about experience design and skills-based personalization. Those are things that I think are just really, really super important. We have a lot of research with that as part of our institute membership as well, too. So I think that's pretty important. We also hear a lot of questions about, there Rachel is.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're great.
Okay,
It's a
forgive
good test
me.
for me. So you lead off. I've been doing all this talking, and I think most people want to see and hear from you.
Sorry, I had a Wi-Fi text just
No.
interruption. Forgive me, but I'm glad I'm back, and let me know if it fades out, and appreciate you tap dancing in the meantime. I've said a lot of four-letter words to get here, but we're back, and hopefully the camera is working as well. Before I was so rudely interrupted. I had a question that I got, Mike, that was about being in different seasons, that growth pacing that I talked about in the Leadership Lounge one article, and how everybody isn't trying to move to the next level. The question was, well, how do leaders manage that without losing performance on their teams? And I think, that's a fair question. Just because you're not trying to get to the next level doesn't mean I don't want you to push as well in role, right? I think it's about changing what the target is, right? If you're not trying to move to the next level, let's say you're an individual contributor, but you don't want to be a manager, right?
Mhm.
Okay, well, what is the target for you in role? So if I were coaching someone here, I'd say, all right, well, what's a great goal for you? If you want to be in this role in a year, what would you like to see accomplished? How would you like people to talk about you within the organization? What would you like to add that you can own? Like those would be the things that as a leader you can ask those questions to that person who's comfortable in their role, comfortable in their
Mhm.
position, but that can still get some more performance out of them. What do you think?
No, I mean, I agree. We're addressing this just recently, but I also think it keeps people fresh. It's the whole career mobility thing we're just talking about. And employees are more likely to stay when they have that. I mean, think about it. There are some people, some of our, our parents or grandparents that were in the same role for a long time. They did a wonderful job, but did they have the same level of engagement as they would if they were had a level of career mobility that was going
Yeah.
forward. And I think those are things that are important. Also making full career changes can be very like challenging and exciting at the same time. Moving from for example, being a CFO into being a, managing, director or analyst, that is a
Yeah.
big challenge. We have somebody that's happening to you soon who you'll meet next week as well. So
Wow.
I think those are great challenges and interesting things. But internally with a company, yeah, you should move people all around as much as possible, keeps them fresh and exposes them more to the organization, exposes them to different leadership, and it helps them to learn and be a little bit more engaged, is what my opinion is.
Yeah, I love job swapping. I've heard that term a couple of times. Like they're happy being an analyst in maybe one function, but now they can go over into a different function and still be an analyst, but be learning something new and bringing their skill set and capabilities to it. So there's nothing wrong with being in a season where you're not trying to advance, but that doesn't
Mhm.
mean you can't still advance within role. I think you just have to redefine what that looks like. And leaders need to be aware that it looks differently when people want to stay where they are, but they still want to perform well.
Yeah, in that case, I mean, what do you think about stretch assignments then? So let's say career mobility or job swapping is just not an option. What about stretch assignments that's completely different from what an individual or manager even may be doing?
Yeah, stretch assignments are beautiful, but I think they should be rewarded, right? It's meant to, and some people call them heat assignments as well. Like they're meant to
Oh, that's
stretch you or
interesting.
they're a little hot, like it's higher level, it's something that you don't normally do within your regular scope of work. And the
Hmm.
great thing is it gives you exposure, it teaches you lessons, you start to pick up on new things, you get to interact potentially with different levels of leadership. But don't just do it to grow the individual for the sake of development. Like reward them if they do it well. That's one piece that I find isn't often embedded in stretch assignments. It's like, okay, I'm going to
No.
stretch you. You're high potential. I want you to do our next executive briefing at next month's call. And then you do it and you get a little feedback, but where's the reward? Like, okay, since you did that well, I'd like you to. Like, that's the part that I feel like is missing when it comes to stretch assignments. What do you think?
Well, what about a monetary
That'd
bonus?
be nice.
Instead of
What
more
about
work, you
some
did a great
money?
job. Now we're going to put you in front of the board. Um,
Yes,
you know,
yes,
so I think that's
yes,
important too. I think you have to pull, it's another lever to, to have and making people want to do it. So they're just not like, oh, they're giving me this great opportunity, but then what? It doesn't have
exactly.
to be a lot of money. It could
Yeah,
be a lunch with the CEO or with a business unit leader.
yes.
It takes time, but it's not that difficult to figure out. So
Yeah, tie it to
that's where my
something.
thinking goes to.
Yeah, tie it to something tangible that
Mhm.
people can feel like, okay, it was worth the stretch. Here's why I'm saying this. Some people are already burnt out or getting close to, I mean, they're performing at such a high level, and then you give that high potential or that high performing individual a stretch assignment, stretching them either further. Where's the reward? Like, what do they get for stretching? And
Mhm.
why would they want to do it again if they don't get anything but discomfort? I mean,
Yeah.
stretch assignments come with a lot of discomfort.
No, they do too. And I've been thinking a lot about because I'm going through a process where, I'm thinking about leveraging a really incredible, well-experienced person who's been a former C-level
Yeah,
executive and partner at a major firm. And one of his processes is doing 365 the 360
yeah,
360 degree feedback on yourself as a leader. Of course, with big companies I think it can work really well. With smaller teams I think it's difficult because you're working with your team for 4 or 5 years. You know exactly where the feedback's coming from. I don't know
yeah.
how honest that is, and frankly, one of my opinions is feedback is not always a gift. That's my unpopular opinion for our segment coming up is no, it's not always a gift because leaders, are leaders, and sometimes you just don't get the concept of everything that that particular manager or leader going through. But I digress. So what do you
Oh,
think?
that was a lot there. And listen, I see we've got some people joining us on this call, and you all have the opportunity to interact with us in the chat. We are looking at the chat, and it's blank. So if you want to share anything, if you're in agreement, or if you have a question, or if you want to disagree, hey, that's the reason it's there. We want you to all join us. So I see there's Kelly, Megan, Nicole. Thank you, Ross. Jesse, Jennifer, Sherry, thank you for joining us. Valeria, and we would love to hear your thoughts in the chat. Even if you just tell us where you're joining us from, I'd like to know that as well. But as they do that, Mike, let's hear your comment here again about feedback isn't always a gift. Now, let's. What do you mean it's not always a gift? I beg to differ, and I kind of love feedback, so this is why I want to ask you this. What do you mean it's not always a gift?
I don't think it's always a gift if you don't understand. I think it's difficult to give somebody feedback if you don't understand the contextual um, ramifications of somebody's job. I used to disagree with what I just said, to tell you the truth. But in terms of thinking about how we were, maybe 25, 30 years ago, I would have said, yeah, feedback's a gift. My manager should always know what I'm thinking. I don't think so. Not necessarily, because I think that manager has so many responsibilities, especially at higher levels. They're doing their absolute best. And it is what it is. So, I mean, should you always take feedback? Yeah. Sometimes you have to understand the source of where it's coming from as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what makes it challenging. It's tough to take feedback if you're a VP of a multi-conglomerate and the person that just started in the mailroom is giving you feedback that sometimes you don't always say good morning with a smile. And sometimes it looks like you're a little bit distracted going up the elevator. So that's my thinking.
Okay, I can agree with that. That's
Okay,
not,
come on.
yes, yes, that's fair. I love the comment. I'm seeing some comments in the chat here. Sherry says, I think feedback might be a gift in disguise. I like that. Essentially,
I
it
like
might
that
be
better
like
than
a,
what I said.
yeah, that's pretty well said. I like what you said too. But it might be a blind spot for the person. They might not recognize their gift until later, right? Okay, so I personally love feedback. I like to reframe it as, okay, it's pepper in my teeth, and I don't care who tells me. I just want to know there's pepper in my teeth. So if the guy in the mailroom is telling me I've got pepper in my teeth, he told me before I got all the way to my office, right? I think you're right. It depends on who it comes from. Sometimes we talk about feedback triggers, right? Like if my mother-in-law is telling me I have pepper in my teeth, I'm probably a little ticked off, right? Like oh, Rachel, you've got something here. Like it's going to bother me if it's coming from her versus my best friend or somebody that I trust and work with day to day, right? So
Well,
I
it's all about timing, right? If they tell you
yeah.
that before an important meeting, great. If they tell you that after the important meeting and said, "Oh, by the way, I noticed you had a piece of pepper in your, between your teeth," probably not great. And I love what Megan mentioned in one of the chats is sometimes you love a gift and sometimes it goes in a drawer for later and sometimes it goes in the trash. I actually couldn't agree more. So thank you for that, Megan. And it's amazing we have so many folks engaged when we're having a little bit of Wi-Fi issues here, but that's okay. Also, I see some other feedback. So yes, I agree with Sherry, as you mentioned. Feedback sometimes can be a gift in disguise. At the end of the day, I think it's important. You have to take everything in when you're managing people, and there's leader. As a leader, you have to understand you got to be willing to accept feedback. I'm not saying people shouldn't give feedback. I think you should. I think there's always a time and certainly a place for that. But like as you're coming up too, I think it's just really good feedback to ask for feedback as well. So if you can have a two-way and can have kind of a safe space, if you will, in the corporate environment, which sometimes gets to be more difficult from time to time, I think that's what you have to aim from. I think that's just really important. So those are just some basic things. Um, yeah, I'd love to hear if people want to share, what's the one leadership mistake that you think you made that taught you something invaluable, or even a leadership mistake that you saw one of your leaders or managers make in years past. Doesn't have to be current, but I would love to hear from anybody that has some feedback on that. I think it's really important. I know for myself, leadership mistakes that I've made probably more than most people here. But I think there's a couple certainly. But I think one of the things that comes out is not listening enough. Sometimes you're so busy you just don't sit down. All it really takes is 3 to 4 minutes just to focus and to listen to somebody's feedback. And I think there we go. it gets more exciting every minute, Rachel.
I'm not doing this on purpose.
No, I think this is a stretch assignment for me, isn't it? You're good. And Wi-Fi is one of those four-letter words today, apparently. So we do have a question. I see you now, Rachel. You're doing great. So I answer from Kelly said, I think it begins with safety. It's talking about, I think, leadership feedback. So I definitely think it begins with safety, and it's our job as a leader to create that so we can facilitate an environment where feedback is actually seen as a gift. And I think that's important. Comments, Rach?
Yes, I can you hear me and can
I
you see
can.
and
You're
you can
perfect
see
once
me?
again.
Okay. Well, yes, I think it is a gift. I love that comment as well. When I got dropped, you were sharing from Megan that it's sometimes a gift that you put in a drawer for later, and sometimes it goes in the trash. I like that. I love that we have the option to.
Yep. Well, we're definitely not getting feedback right now. But I think I know what Rachel would be saying is she would be saying, I'm not going to put words in her mouth. But we do have the option of doing that as leaders. But the key thing is like listening and taking things in. And again, you got to be in a really safe environment, like Kelly was saying here in the chat. Oh, sorry, Rachel. Go ahead.
I never get a warning when it's going to go out, so forgive
Okay, this is the
me.
first time we've done so many of these, so this is
Yeah,
this is good. We'll roll with it.
it's my feedback. My feedback is thank you for being patient as this goes in and out. But I also saw that it's a data point instead of thinking of it as a gift. And this is for some of my analysts and engineers and some of the folks that really gift is a little too light for them. But when they think of it as a data point, as just information, it's just a factual point that someone is sharing with you, that takes a lot of the sting out of it as well. I like that. I like that, Valeria.
Yeah, no, I think so too. So one of the questions that we have is excuse me. And I'm not going to say 2025. So
Okay.
you finish a sentence, the best leaders next year in 2026 will be what?
Ooh, we'll be using AI.
Oh, that's
We'll be
interesting.
using AI.
Hmm.
Again, we before we even started, I was talking about some incredible usage of AI that I'm seeing out of David Chestnut, out of Accenture, on LinkedIn. And I know that a lot of leaders still by November of 2026 are still hesitant about AI and resistant about AI and don't want to embed it in things and don't want it to be a part of how they lead. And
Yes.
I think that that's a big mistake. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised you said AI. I thought you were going to say something a little bit more traditional, like, work harder, be first in the office, last out,
Resilient, blah,
you
blah,
know,
blah.
blah, blah, blah. So, I think that, no, I think that's interesting. So I think I'll take it one step further. I would like to see leaders and managers actually not make their employees worry about being replaced by AI, but work with their employees to figure out how they can augment their jobs better so they're more
Yeah,
productive with less stress and do higher quality work and are more accurate. I think that augmenting is, the key for
yes,
next year. It's not about telling your team that we may all be replaced with AI, be prepared
yeah,
to be laid off if that's true.
right.
And sure, you have to be relatively upfront and direct with that. But I do think there's a lot of opportunities for leaders to, figure out how they can leverage um, AI into their team. And just for
Yeah,
example, so we're in the research business. We have, tons of global clients. We've been using Read.ai as our note taker for the last,
yeah,
year and a
I
half. And
love it.
and we've had questions, from certain clients about, what's the next phase of, learning? What are learning leaders or HR leaders, looking at, next year that's, truly innovative and what's the next phase? And we have research on this. We have future of work research, but what I'm able to do now through Read.ai, and it sounds so simple, is I can
Yeah,
take all the hundreds of conversations that my team has had in the last 6 months and literally leverage AI to go through all our conversations that happen person to person and prompt it properly to answer that question and give specific sourced
Wow.
examples for it. And I like to be able to see leaders do something very, similar with it. I think it would be great for leaders to record some of their meetings that they have if they're face to face, or obviously if they're online,
Virtual.
record that with a note taker and leverage that over 3 to 6 months, and then prompt things for, what were the highlights over the last 3 months as a leader, and what were the great ideas that my team came up with that are driving business forward. There are
Mhm.
certain things you can do that are very like simple and basic. So I agree with you. I think leaders actually will be using AI more in 2026, but they have to use it within, a certain framework, I think, not to replace, but to make people and make the company better.
Yeah, I like the word you use, augment. Yeah, or to innovate, or to synthesize data more quickly,
Hmm.
or to
Yeah.
pull sentiment analysis. I mean, AI can do so many things, and I love to see where people are on their journey with it. Look, for example, my little sister just started using it as a leader, so she's filming like, oh my gosh, I just asked it to do this and it gave me this and it's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. And she's just finding the epiphanies now. And I'm like, yeah, you're about 11 months, maybe a year. If we're talking to other practitioners like Ashwin, he's really good with AI. My gosh, how long has he been working with it?
Yeah.
And they're going to be behind. I just worry that if you're not used to prompting, used to context, used to using it as a thought partner and
Mhm.
a data synthesizer, you're going to be behind. You're going to be behind. And I could
No,
have
I
said
agree.
resilient, but I've already that's
I
too.
like that word though. It rolls off the tongue well. And I love this. I'm not going to say the first name and the last name with this, but this is such a nice, real like comment on one of their worst leadership snafus, which was due
Yeah.
to, I even feel bad reading it, but it's so honest. I thank you for the person that wrote that. My worst leadership snafu was due to cultural ignorance. I managed an online global training delivery with training delivery delivered that included Canada, and the training took place in October. And I did not know that Canadians celebrated Thanksgiving in October. You know what? If that's your worst
Oh,
leadership snafu, I've done far worse. So that's
oh,
okay.
I've got some
But
really
thank
good
you.
ones that could beat that. Like, come on.
Yeah.
That's not too bad. But that's also interesting. I didn't know that
Me
Canadians.
either. I just learned something new.
I just learned something new from our audience. So thank you for submitting that. And I mean, if we're on the topic of worst leadership snafus, do you want to share one, Mike?
I shared one when you were kind of off
Oh,
on
okay.
Wi-Fi. Mine was a little bit more generic. I don't always listen properly. I've done that
Okay.
probably more than once if I'm really being honest. But my point is you should slow down for 3 to 4 or 5 minutes. Always consider the source, but usually there's, even if it's not correct, there's usually a half truth in everything, and you do have to consider it. And sometimes, yeah, you know what, leaders, managers, employees, yeah, you always have something on your mind. Sometimes you can come across as a little bit distant or aloof, I should say. And you have to really fight to be aware of that and kind of be present, because people around you are also going through things too. They may be, their wife may be, sick, or, they have to take over and, help their, husband with the kids, or vice versa. So I think just being present is really important for me. Sometimes I'm not present because I'm thinking a few steps ahead. So I've got to be better in that way.
Well, at least you're self-aware, in coaching, that's the
I guess
biggest
that's
part
good.
that we try to, yeah, at least you're aware.
Thank you for the comment. Thank you.
That's the first step is admitting you have a problem, is
Mhm.
what they say, right? And I saw another question submitted through the Q&A here. It said, or really maybe just a comment, but sharing that sometimes the biggest lessons learned as leaders is to not keep trying to be nice, right? Being the nice leader blurs the line a little bit, and now you can still be kind even when you have to be firm, right? So they shared that it came time to be tough and it was harder because they were always so nice. So, I mean, the word nice, I don't know if it belongs in leadership. I think to be kind and respectful is important, but
Mhm.
nice, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm very nice. I'm friendly, but when it
Mhm.
comes to leading my team or leading a function, what do you think, Mike? Is nice the number one trait?
Well, I think I tell my kids that kindness is the superpower of the future, so I'll always be
Yes.
kind. But like
Yeah.
you say, that's different than being nice. I kind of go back to I had the former chief learning officer of McKinsey, actually, Matt Smith, speaking at my conference. Maybe it was 4 or 5, 6, 7 years ago, who I still keep
Yeah.
in touch with lately. And he was talking about a book called Nudge, and talking about leadership, and and I asked him for some specific feedback examples. For example, of like, if you have employee A, not doing the job of what they're doing, and you just want them to do X, Y, and Z, how would you manage that person? Do you put them on a performance plan? Do
Mm,
say you're not doing your job? Do you say your performance does not merit you keeping your job, which there's a
mm,
place
mm.
for that? And he said something really interesting to me, and he said, you should just tell that individual, like, your other coworkers are doing this, and we really need you to keep up with them and do the same, because it's helpful for the team.
Oh,
And I thought that was really, a good, useful thing. Now, is that going to solve all your problems? No.
sure.
But,
No.
it's coming from a seasoned person who I just thought was, I thought it was just well thought out. It was literally a 15-second conversation, but it really did make me think. So I always go back to that.
Yeah, that's great advice. I like sort of benchmarking. That's what it sounds like. Like, hey, your peers
Hmm.
are already doing this. It'd be great if
Hmm.
you could pace along with them and start to incorporate this in your work. And I think for some of us, I took a lot of leadership courses and programs. Have you taken assessment? Earlier, we were talking about 360 assessments, but I took a Gallup Strengths Finder. I'm sure you've heard of Strengths Finders through Gallup. And one of the domains is influence, and it breaks it down into different things. But one of them is the ability to be futuristic, future forward, right? But another one that I have in my top five is competitive, like competition. So if you tell me that my peers are doing something that I'm not doing, now I've got to do it. Now I've got to do it better than my peers. Like he's right. That's great motivation to encourage them to try to get alongside shoulder to shoulder with their team or their peers or somebody with a similar title, however they want to do it. That's great
It's
advice.
setting the standard. It's
Yeah.
cultural. Setting a culture is also setting the standard. It's kind of like in baseball, the old manager Joe Madden, when he was having success with the Tampa Bay, can't call them Devil Rays, Tampa Bay Rays. His only rule he had for his players is run hard to first. That's it. Because if you can run hard to first, everything else will follow. But if you're not, then you're really not part of the culture and the standard that we're trying to build here. And I kind of look at that with
Yeah.
business. It's like you can tell people a million things, like pick one thing, run hard to first, and everything else kind of follows. So whatever that is as a leader, that's the standard you're trying to set. I would
Yeah.
say think about that one standard that you can just like make your whole team about, or your entire company about, in many places.
I love the baseball analogy. I have to double click on it because I just watched A League of Their Own. All right. So I
Oh,
know
old
you've got,
movie, love that.
it's a great movie.
David,
And it's fresh.
Madonna,
Yes, it's fresh in the
others.
mind. And, they got to run hard to first base, right? And then the rest will take care of itself. If we can get everybody on first, we can eventually get a home run. I like
There we
that
go.
metaphor. And I know we are at like 3 minutes after. I know we said 1 to 1:30, and we've had some technical difficulties. So thank you to everybody
You've
for
always been fabulous, as always.
sticking with
Anything,
me through
anything you
it.
want to leave with here? And thank you everybody for joining as well and hanging in there. But last words, Rachel?
Yeah, I would just say tune in because we're going to be doing more of these, right? We
Yes.
clearly people want us to do this. So please make sure you're staying in touch with Brandon Hall Group and all of their events that are going on. We mentioned the Women in Leadership Summit that's coming up. I see Marlene is in the chat sharing that she's here. So I can't wait to see her in person next week. And I hope to share some of that summit with the audience on my LinkedIn. So please find me on LinkedIn if you're not connected with me. I'll put the link in the chat. But really great to collaborate with you and pick your brain, Mike. You're the brain behind all of this.
No, not
Anything
quite,
you
but
want to
thank you for
leave?
being very generous. And I hear you have a dinner Tuesday. Do you have a dinner Tuesday night? Is that
Yes, I'll be there at El Camino. I can't wait. Like, come
okay?
on. So
Fantastic.
it'll be wonderful. And I can't wait to see Rachel. And hopefully we'll schedule another one of these so we can invite others. And thank you to everybody who submitted questions and comments in the chat. It's so great to interact with you all. So
It really
that
is.
is our Ask Me Anything. This was fun.
This was fun. Let's do it again. Thank you,
We
everybody.
will. See ya.